Manchester in the mid-19th century was a city of stark contrasts, an engine of the Industrial Revolution, dense with brick, smoke, and motion. Cotton mills rose along canals and rail lines, their chimneys pumping steam into the sky as machines turned raw fiber into global wealth. Power no longer moved through water alone, but through iron, coal, and time itself. Goods, labor, and capital flowed at unprecedented speed, and Manchester learned to trade not just textiles, but productivity, discipline, and human endurance. Thanks to advanced AI, we can recreate these scenes by studying industrial maps, factory records, early photographs, and first-hand accounts from the Victorian era. From the roaring mill floors of Ancoats and the warehouses along the Rochdale Canal to crowded worker housing, rail yards, and soot-darkened streets, we can step back more than 170 years and see Manchester as its inhabitants once experienced: restless, transformative, and unforgiving. If you enjoy this journey, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city or era you'd like to explore next. Image 1. The Forest of Chimneys, the Rise of Cottonopolis. This image captures the defining silhouette of Manchester in the 1850s, a skyline dominated not by church spires, but by the towering chimneys of steam-powered cotton mills. By the mid-19th century, Manchester had earned the moniker Cottonopolis, serving as the international center of the cotton and textile trade. In 1853 alone, there were over 108 cotton mills operating within the city limits, driven by the relentless power of steam engines, which required massive amounts of coal. The thick black smoke billowing from these chimneys, as depicted in the artwork, was both a symbol of immense industrial might and a harbinger of environmental catastrophe. Contemporary observers, including French aristocrat Alexis de Tocqueville, remarked that from this filthy sewer of industry, pure gold flowed, highlighting the paradox of Manchester's wealth, being born from pollution and grime. The 1850s marked the maturation of the factory system. The transition from water power to steam power was complete, allowing factories to be built away from fast-flowing rivers and directly into the urban core. This concentration of industry created a unique microclimate where the sun was often obscured by a permanent haze of smog, a phenomenon that would define the city's atmosphere for a century. The painting reflects the sheer scale of production. By this decade, the wider Lancashire region was processing the vast majority of the world's cotton, linking the gray skies of Manchester directly to the cotton plantations of the American South and the markets of British India. This visual density of chimneys represents the heartbeat of the British Empire's economy, pumping out textiles at a speed and volume previously unimaginable in human history. Image 2. Inside the mill, the human cogs of industry. Turning to the interior view of the mills, this image illustrates the reality of the workforce that powered the Industrial Revolution. The 1850s were a pivotal decade for labor rights and factory legislation. Following the agitation of the 1840s, the Factory Act of 1850 was passed, the Compromise Act, which established a standard working day for women and young persons, 10.5 hours on weekdays and ending at 2 p.m. on Saturdays. This painting likely depicts the frenetic energy of the mule spinning or weaving rooms, where the noise of the machinery was deafening, often causing permanent hearing loss among workers, known locally as spinners deaf. The demographics of the 1850s workforce were shifting. While adult men held the skilled positions of spinners, the vast majority of the operatives were women and children, known as piecers and scavengers, who crawled beneath the dangerous, unshielded machinery to clear dust and fix broken threads. The scene captures the discipline of clock time replacing sun time, a fundamental shift in human behavior enforced by the factory whistle. The air inside these rooms was kept deliberately hot and humid to prevent the cotton threads from snapping, creating a tropical, dust-laden atmosphere that bred respiratory diseases like bisonosis, brown lung. Despite the harsh conditions, the 1850s also saw the rise of a more organized labor movement and the consolidation of trade unions, particularly among the skilled engineers and cotton spinners. This image serves as a testament to the human cost of industrialization, where the bodies of the working class were inextricably utilized as extensions of the machines they tended, fueling the unprecedented economic growth of the Victorian era. Image 3, the urban labyrinth, life in Angel Meadow. This street scene depicts the immediate consequence of rapid industrialization, chaotic urbanization, and the creation of slums. Manchester's population exploded from roughly 75,000 in 1801 to over 300,000 by 1851, a rate of growth that no city infrastructure could match. The painting reflects the conditions described by Friedrich Engels in his seminal work, The Condition of the Working Class in England, which, though written in the 1840s, remained largely accurate for the 1850s. Areas like Angel Meadow and Little Ireland were notorious for their squalor, where workers lived in damp, unventilated cellar dwellings, often with one family to a single room. In the 1850s, sanitation was the city's most pressing crisis. Manchester had no comprehensive sewage system, and waste often accumulated in the streets or seeped into the River Irwell, which flowed black with industrial dye and excrement. This lack of hygiene led to repeated outbreaks of cholera and typhus. However, the 1850s also marked the beginning of civic response. The Manchester Corporation began to take tentative steps toward public health reform, though progress was slow. The architecture in the painting, haphazard, crowded, and dark, contrasts sharply with the wealth being generated just streets away. It highlights the stark class divide of the era, the two nations of the rich and poor living in close proximity, but in entirely different worlds. The street life depicted here would have been a mix of Irish immigrants fleeing the potato famine, rural migrants seeking work, and the factory hands struggling to survive on fluctuating wages dictated by the global price of cotton.
We need to avoid the existing water pipes near numbers 3 and 4.
Image 4, the arteries of trade, canals and railways. This image focuses on the transport infrastructure that made Manchester's dominance possible. By the 1850s, Manchester was the most interconnected city in the world, sitting at the nexus of a complex web of canals and railways. The painting likely shows the bustling activity along the Bridgewater Canal or the Rochdale Canal, which were still vital for moving heavy raw materials like coal and cotton bales. However, the 1850s were truly the golden age of the railway. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway, opened in 1830, had by this decade spawned a massive network, with stations like London Road, now Piccadilly, and Victoria Station becoming cathedrals of the steam age. These transport links were essential for the just-in-time nature of the cotton industry. Raw cotton arrived from Liverpool, was spun in Manchester, and the finished calico cloth was immediately shipped out to ports to be sold in markets ranging from Shanghai to Brazil. The scene depicts the logistical mastery required to feed the mills. Without this constant flow of goods, the city would starve. This era also saw the rise of the Manchester man, the merchant prince who coordinated this trade. The warehouses pictured, often grand palazzo-style buildings that still stand today, served as the showrooms and storage for this global empire. This infrastructure was not just local, it was the mechanism of globalization. The connectivity depicted here explains how a landlocked city could dominate international trade, reducing the cost of transport and ensuring that Manchester cloth could undercut competitors anywhere on the globe. Image 5, the exchange, the economic brain of the world. The final image moves from the gritty production to the high-stakes world of commerce, likely depicting the Royal Exchange or the commercial district. In the 1850s, the Manchester Royal Exchange was the largest commodities exchange in the world. It was said that when the exchange floor fell silent, the cotton trade globally held its breath. This decade was the height of the Manchester School of Economics, led by figures like Richard Cobden and John Bright. They advocated for laissez-faire capitalism, free trade, and pacifism, arguing that unrestricted commerce would lead to world peace. The repeal of the Corn Laws in 1846 was their great victory, and by the 1850s, their philosophy dominated British politics. The painting captures the confidence and opulence of the merchant class. These men were not the landed gentry of the South. They were self-made industrialists who believed that commerce was a moral crusade. The architecture reflects this civic pride, grand neoclassical buildings designed to rival the monuments of ancient Rome. However, this economic powerhouse was fragile. It depended entirely on the supply of raw cotton from the American South. The 1850s were the boom years before the cotton famine, caused by the American Civil War in the 1860s. This image represents the intellectual and financial zenith of Manchester, a city that, in this decade, believed it had solved the riddle of economic progress, and was busy exporting not just cloth, but its ideology of industrial capitalism to the rest of the world. Nahu, Nai Jan Chi Tiet Chua.